If you are over 60 and you are noticing burning feelings in your feet, numb or tingling toes, sensations like electric shocks in your limbs, constant pins and needles, or trouble with balance and feeling steady on your feet, please hear this clearly. These symptoms are not just odd random things or an unavoidable part of growing older. They come from a slow, gradual shift in the biological environment inside your body, a change that often happens so quietly over many years that no one noticed until the symptoms finally became obvious. Too many people are told that peripheral neuropathy is simply nerves wearing out naturally with age, like an old machine slowly falling apart after years of use. Others hear that it is mostly genetic and that there is not much real hope for meaningful improvement. The usual message, whether said directly or just strongly implied, is to focus mainly on managing the discomfort as best you can, while preparing for a slow, steady worsening over time. What is so seldom explained in a clear, straightforward way is that nerves do not decline in a random, unpredictable, or purely age-related manner. They respond very directly to the chemical environment they live in, to the quality and steadiness of their blood supply, and to the metabolic signals they receive every single day. When that internal environment becomes persistently unfavorable or even hostile, the nerves gradually start to struggle and show signs of distress. Importantly, the reverse is also true. Even modest, consistent improvements in that same environment can allow nerves to hold on to, or in many cases recover, much more function and comfort than most standard explanations lead people to believe is possible. Peripheral neuropathy is not one single disease on its own. It is a recognizable pattern of damage that appears when the peripheral nerves, the long branching pathways that connect the brain and spinal cord to every distant part of the body, begin to malfunction. These nerves carry vital signals for sensation, touch, temperature, pain, for muscle movement and coordination, for balance, and for automatic body functions. Because these nerves are exceptionally long and require a constant, high level of energy to keep their signals working properly, they are especially sensitive to issues like unstable blood sugar, poor circulation, ongoing low-grade inflammation, and shortages of important nutrients. That sensitivity is exactly why symptoms usually show up first, and often most strongly, in the feet and hands. Those are the farthest points from the heart's main pump and depend most heavily on the smallest, most delicate blood vessels for oxygen and nourishment. A crucial fact to really understand is that nerve damage builds up quietly, silently, and over a very long time, often for years and sometimes for decades, before any clear, unmistakable symptoms appear. During this long hidden phase, the nerves face ongoing but invisible metabolic stress without sending strong warning signals. Slowly and steadily, damage piles up. Proteins inside the nerve fibers become structurally changed and less effective. The tiny feeding blood vessels stiffen and narrow. The protective myelin insulation gradually thins, and the electrical impulses traveling along the nerves lose speed, strength, or precision. For quite a while, the nervous system compensates remarkably well, hiding these early problems so that daily life continues without obvious disruption. Only when that compensation is finally overwhelmed do the clear symptoms, burning pain, numbness, unsteadiness, finally emerge. By that point, the underlying structural and functional changes are already quite advanced. This is why neuropathy so often feels sudden, shocking, and deeply unfair, even though in reality it developed very slowly and methodically over a long period. In the great majority of cases, one of the main driving forces behind this gradual process is a group of damaging compounds called advanced glycation end products, or AGEs for short. These form when excess glucose molecules bind permanently to proteins, fats, and other structures throughout the body. That binding is not harmless. It fundamentally alters the shape, flexibility, and performance of the affected tissues. Once created, Ages are highly resistant to normal breakdown and removal, so they build up steadily as the years pass. They especially target tissues that depend on elasticity, precise signaling, and an extensive network of fine capillaries, exactly the features that make peripheral nerves one of their most common and most severely affected targets. To understand why ages cause such deep and widespread harm, it helps to think about the process at a molecular level. Glucose is essential as the body's main fuel, but it is also a very reactive molecule. When blood glucose stays elevated for long periods, glucose gets many more opportunities to react with proteins and other structures. Under unfavorable conditions, particularly repeated or sustained high levels, these reactions create permanent, rigid crosslinks between molecules. People often compare it to the way sugar hardens and caramelizes when heated on a stove. In the body, the same kind of reaction happens much more slowly and subtly, but the end result is similar. Tissues lose their suppleness, work less efficiently, and become much more prone to inflammation and further injury. In the case of peripheral nerves specifically, ages deliver damage through a powerful triple mechanism that hits several critical parts at once. First, they directly alter the nerve axons themselves, interfering with key proteins needed for smooth, efficient transmission of electrical impulses. Second, they damage the myelin sheath, the important fatty insulation that allows fast, reliable signal conduction. When myelin is harmed or thinned, impulses slow down, weaken, scatter, or become distorted. Third, and often the most serious over the long term, ages injure the microvascular network, the delicate capillaries that deliver oxygen and nutrients straight to the nerve tissue. When these microvessels stiffen, narrow, or lose their ability to open wider when needed, the nerves suffer from chronic undernourishment and oxygen shortage, leading to progressive weakness and dysfunction. This three-way attack explains the wide but consistent range of symptoms people describe. Intense burning from irritated, overactive nerve endings, complete numbness when signals stop arriving, erratic tingling or electric shock feelings from disordered firing, muscle weakness from unreliable motor signals, and balance problems from inaccurate or delayed sensory information reaching the brain. Although the exact combination and strength of symptoms differ from person to person, the underlying biological pattern is remarkably similar in most cases. One important detail often overlooked in standard medical conversations is that a routine fasting blood glucose test provides only a narrow, incomplete picture of what is really happening. Many people with developing or established neuropathy are told their glucose is normal because their fasting level falls within the reference range. But a fasting reading shows only the lowest point of the day, after many hours without food, and completely misses the damaging spikes that happen after meals. The greatest contribution to age formation occurs during those after-eating periods, when glucose rises sharply and stays elevated for hours. Repeated post-meal spikes over months and years are a primary driver of cumulative nerve injury. As we age, the body naturally becomes less efficient at quickly clearing glucose from the blood after eating. Muscle mass tends to decrease, insulin sensitivity declines somewhat, and glucose lingers longer in the bloodstream. Importantly, aging by itself does not cause neuropathy in everyone. Instead, it reduces metabolic flexibility and resilience. When these age-related changes combine with common modern habits, frequent snacking, eating late at night, heavy reliance on processed carbohydrates, the conditions are set for steady, ongoing age accumulation. Vitamin B12 plays another central protective role in nerve health. It is essential for maintaining the myelin sheath, supporting DNA repair and synthesis in nerve cells, and helping clear toxic metabolic byproducts. Unfortunately, B12 absorption often decreases with age, and this decline is frequently made worse by commonly prescribed medications such as proton pump inhibitors, H2 blockers, and metformin. When B12 drops below optimal levels, a key defense and repair system for nerves is weakened, allowing damage to progress more easily. Routine lab tests can sometimes miss what is called functional B12 deficiency. Serum levels may fall within normal reference ranges, yet still be too low to fully meet the nerve's real needs. This subtle shortfall can continue for years, quietly increasing vulnerability before symptoms become strong enough to prompt closer investigation. By the time clear signs appear, the deficiency has usually been present and influential for a long time. Dietary sources of ages are another factor that is frequently overlooked. While most age formation happens inside the body from prolonged high glucose exposure, preformed ages also come directly from food. Cooking methods that use very high, dry heat, grilling, frying, broiling, roasting, searing, or browning, generate large amounts of these compounds. Once eaten, they are absorbed into the bloodstream and add noticeably to the total age burden. Even when overall blood sugar control is reasonably good, regular high-heat cooking can speed up tissue aging and damage. Switching to gentler cooking methods, steaming, poaching, braising, slow cooking, or stewing, can meaningfully reduce dietary age intake with only small adjustments to everyday routines. Once nerve damage has started, inflammation steps in to intensify and prolong the problem. Ages bind to specific receptors, especially rage, triggering broad inflammatory pathways. These pathways keep nerves irritated, increase oxidative stress, and create a self-sustaining feedback loop. This ongoing inflammatory activity helps explain why symptoms often become worse at night. Circulation naturally slows during rest, allowing inflammatory substances to build up and stay longer. The resulting sleep disruption sets up its own harmful cycle. Poor sleep worsens insulin resistance, raises stress hormones like cortisol, leads to larger glucose swings the next day, produces more ages and inflammation, and further harms restorative sleep. Physical activity stands out as one of the most effective, accessible, and well-supported ways to interrupt this damaging sequence. When muscles are active, especially soon after eating, they naturally pull glucose from the bloodstream for energy, reducing those harmful post-meal spikes. Even modest, short walks, nothing intense, are enough to produce meaningful drops in post-meal glucose levels and duration. The main benefit is not dramatic calorie burning or major weight loss, but achieving steadier, healthier metabolic patterns day after day. Regular movement also improves blood flow to peripheral tissues, including the nerves, delivering more oxygen and nutrients while helping remove waste products. Maintaining muscle mass plays a similarly vital long-term role. As muscle tissue decreases with age or inactivity, the body's ability to store and handle glucose efficiently weakens. Light resistance training, simple bodyweight exercises, resistance bands, or light weights helps preserve muscle, strengthens metabolic health, and provides indirect but substantial protection for nerves. This benefit builds slowly and quietly, which is why it is so often undervalued compared to faster-acting approaches. Good hydration supports the whole system by keeping blood viscosity optimal and promoting healthy microcirculation. Even mild, ongoing dehydration thickens the blood, slows flow through tiny vessels, and concentrates glucose, raising risk. Many older adults experience a reduced sense of thirst and end up drinking less without realizing it. Building a habit of regular, consistent fluid intake throughout the day is a simple, low-effort way to strengthen vascular support for nerve health. Chronic or repeated stress influences neuropathy indirectly but powerfully through hormonal pathways. Ongoing stress raises cortisol, which increases blood glucose, promotes insulin resistance, and adds to metabolic strain. While stress by itself rarely starts neuropathy, it significantly amplifies the conditions that allow damage to move forward more quickly. Simple, practical ways to manage stress, deep breathing, gentle stretching, short mindfulness practices, or enjoyable hobbies can lighten this extra burden and help create greater stability. One of the most damaging and widespread misconceptions about peripheral neuropathy is the belief that its progression is completely inevitable and beyond anyone's influence. This belief often leads to resignation, lower motivation, and a passive acceptance of decline. In reality, while severely and long-damaged nerves may never return to perfect condition, many partially affected nerves can stabilize impressively, slow or stop further deterioration, and in some cases regain meaningful function when the internal environment becomes consistently more supportive. Large numbers of people report clear reductions in pain intensity, better balance and coordination, improved sleep, and a greater overall sense of well-being once the rate of ongoing damage drops substantially. The realistic central goal is not complete reversal or a miraculous cure. It is the steady, ongoing protection of whatever nerve tissue is still viable. Every stretch of more stable blood sugar removes hours of chemical stress from the nerves. Every night of deeper, more refreshing sleep supports natural repair processes. Every reduction in systemic inflammation allows clearer, less distorted signaling. Over months and years, these small, consistent improvements add up in the same gradual way the original damage did, slowly, steadily, and powerfully. The ability to meaningfully affect this trajectory is deeply important. Efficient clearance of glucose after meals depends heavily on having enough muscle mass. Insulin directs excess sugar into muscle cells for storage and use. When muscle declines, glucose stays in circulation longer, extending the time available for glycation. This helps explain why neuropathy risk rises with age, even in people who stay relatively lean, because muscle loss can happen separately from visible weight gain, especially without activity that preserves strength. This muscle-glucose link shows why consistent movement offers strong nerve protection even before big dietary changes are made. Regular short walks after meals, for example, meaningfully lower both the height of glucose peaks and how long they last. Over months to years, this habit reduces the cumulative age burden, eases inflammation, and improves blood flow through the microvessels to nerves, addressing root causes much more directly than treatments focused only on symptoms. The vascular network is equally important. Peripheral nerves rely on an intricate web of tiny capillaries that are highly vulnerable to glycation, oxidative stress, and stiffening. Ages reduce nitric oxide production, impair vessel dilation, and cause chronic mild ischemia in distant tissues. Symptoms appear first in the feet, not because the nerves there are inherently more fragile, but because of the simple distance from the heart and dependence on the most delicate vessels. This vascular factor also explains why symptoms often worsen in cold conditions or at night, when flow decreases further, and why past smoking raises long-term risk. Inflammation serves as a connecting thread running through everything. Binding of ages to their receptors starts cascades that amplify oxidative damage, impair cellular energy production, and deepen insulin resistance, creating a reinforcing loop that can speed up symptom progression even without obvious external triggers. Deep, restorative sleep is a foundation of recovery. During good quality sleep, inflammation decreases, insulin sensitivity improves, and repair factors are released. When neuropathy disrupts sleep, this protective window shortens, undermining metabolic control and accelerating damage. Even modest improvements in sleep can therefore bring outsized benefits. Psychological and emotional factors matter greatly as well. Chronic pain, worry about further worsening, and fear of losing independence often lead to anxiety, low mood, or depression. These states further disrupt sleep, raise stress hormones, and reduce motivation for healthy habits, forming yet another reinforcing cycle. Addressing this calls for self-compassion, realistic expectations, and support from others rather than self-blame. Progress should be measured over weeks and months, not day by day. Nerve adaptation happens slowly. Metabolic improvements take time to become solid. Normal fluctuations occur. Focusing on longer-term trends helps prevent discouragement and supports realistic encouragement. In more advanced cases, the emphasis shifts to preserving whatever function remains. Even stopping or greatly slowing progression can dramatically improve daily independence. Less pain, better sleep, greater stability. These changes matter enormously, even if full sensation does not return. Aging also gradually weakens nerve-muscle junctions. Motor nerves pull back from some muscle fibers, reducing responsiveness. The body's ability to compensate through sprouting has limits. This contributes to declining coordination, higher fall risk, reduced activity, muscle loss, and worsening metabolism. A classic downward spiral that gentle, consistent movement helps break. Key nutrients deserve attention. B12 deficiency can mimic or worsen neuropathy. Magnesium supports proper signaling and calmness. Testing and carefully correcting deficiencies can strengthen resilience. Hydration directly affects microcirculation and blood thickness. Age-related decline in thirst sensation increases risk. Steady fluid intake helps maintain flow and nerve nourishment. The most empowering realization is this: neuropathy is a condition you are living with. It is not your entire identity. You remain a whole person with a history, relationships, strengths, passions, and purpose. Keeping this perspective prevents the condition from overshadowing your life more than it needs to. Early and regular attention to B vitamins, especially B12, B6, and folate, particularly after age 50 or when taking medications that interfere with absorption, helps catch and correct problems before they cause major effects. Appropriate correction supports myelin integrity and the body's repair mechanisms. Prevention is not about perfection or zero decline. It is about quietly building protective habits year after year, flattening the curve of change so it remains gentle. Many people in their 70s or 80s have only mild, occasional symptoms and good function because of decades of sustainable choices, not extremes, but consistency. None of this is hidden, overly complicated, or out of reach. It rests on long-established research in metabolism, glycation, inflammation, nerve biology, and aging. What has often been missing is a clear, connected, compassionate explanation designed especially for those over 60 who are experiencing symptoms or supporting loved ones through the condition. Peripheral neuropathy does not have to remain a mysterious, terrifying, unstoppable sentence. At its root, it is a delayed message. The internal environment has drifted too far from balance for too long. The hopeful truth is that the same environment can usually be gently, persistently guided back toward conditions that slow damage, encourage stability, and sometimes allow partial recovery in the nerves that are still viable. You do not have to undo decades of change overnight or through drastic upheaval. What is needed is simply to stop adding to the harm starting today and to keep making that choice tomorrow and the next day and onward. Every hour of steadier glucose, every gentle post-meal walk, every better night of sleep, every small drop in inflammation is a meaningful vote for nerve preservation. Over months, years, and decades, those votes add up powerfully. They may not erase all the prior damage, but they can transform the story, from inevitable decline to managed stability and real influence, from helplessness to grounded hope, from feeling powerless to recognizing genuine personal agency. That core shift from nothing can be done to I can influence so much is where the deepest, most enduring change begins. The most powerful and liberating truth to hold on to is this: peripheral neuropathy is a medical condition you are living with. It is not your entire identity. You remain a complete person with a unique history, valued relationships, personal strengths, interests, and hopes for the future. Holding that larger perspective helps keep the condition from dominating or defining your life any more than is truly necessary. B vitamin status deserves early and regular attention, especially B12, B6, and folate, particularly after age 50 or when taking medications that interfere with absorption, metformin, acid blockers, etc. Routine monitoring and appropriate correction through diet, sublingual forms, or injections when medically indicated, help preserve myelin and reinforce the body's repair mechanisms. Prevention does not require flawless execution or the complete absence of any decline. It is about steadily accumulating small protective factors year after year so that the overall trajectory becomes much gentler. A person in their 70s or 80s who experiences only mild, occasional tingling, maintains good balance, and retains reasonable foot sensation has usually followed these principles quietly and consistently for decades, not through extreme measures, but through sustainable, repeatable habits. None of this information is secret, complicated, or out of reach. It rests on decades of solid scientific work in metabolism, glycation, inflammation, nerve physiology, and healthy aging. What has too often been missing is a clear, practical, and compassionate explanation of how all these pieces connect, especially for people over 60 who are either experiencing early symptoms themselves or supporting someone they care about through the condition. Peripheral neuropathy does not have to remain a mysterious, frightening, or unstoppable diagnosis. At its core, it is a delayed signal, a clear but late-arriving message that the internal environment has drifted too far from optimal balance for too long. The truly encouraging reality is that the same internal environment that allowed damage to develop can, in most cases, be gently and persistently guided back toward conditions that slow further damage, promote stabilization, and sometimes allow meaningful recovery of function in the nerves that remain viable. You do not need to reverse decades of gradual change in one dramatic moment. What is required is simply to stop adding to the problem starting today, and then to keep making that same choice tomorrow, and the day after, and the weeks and months after that. Every hour of steadier blood sugar, every gentle walk after a meal, every night of deeper and more restorative sleep, every small reduction in inflammation is a small but real vote cast in favor of preserving nerve function. Over the course of months, years, and decades, those individual votes add up in powerful ways. They may not completely erase every trace of existing damage, but they have the capacity to rewrite the long-term story, from one of inevitable and relentless worsening to one of managed stability and greater personal control, from resignation and helplessness to genuine, realistic hope, from a sense of having no options to a clear recognition of real agency. That fundamental shift, from the discouraging belief that nothing can be done to the empowering understanding that I can influence a great deal, is exactly where the most meaningful and lasting change truly begins.